presentation now. The topic which was chosen is psychosis in peripartum. So we'll discuss about few important issues in this area. So my experience on this area. So while I was working at NIMHANS as a postdoc fellowship, there was a unit called mother baby unit, where there's a primary senior resident who is in charge of that, and there are consultants. I'm a co-senior resident who will be looking after the inpatients along with other senior residents. We have a 5-bedded ward where we admit both the mother, the just delivered mothers, even within 1 week also, or sometimes within 1 month, lasting up to 1 year. And we look after them for maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, sometimes even 3 months. So it depends on that. And we have a lactation specialist. We used to have a on-call gynecology obstetrician who come and visit if required. So this is the experience we have. And with that, we move on. Overall, there is a raising concern about mental health issues in women. Especially during COVID-19 pandemic, where there are no schools where children stay at home, there are no offices, so the husband and the partner stay at home, and the elders above 60 years also stay at home. So they have to be sandwiched. I think the stress from both the children and the elderly and looking after the partners 24/7 has led to a lot of stress in women, and this had actually aggravated a lot of domestic violence at home, and that led to and in turn a lot of mental health issues. So even now, with a lot of education and a lot of awareness, the median pregnancy, first pregnancy in our country is 19 years. And there is a Lancet article 2016 which states that suicide has surpassed maternal mortality as the leading cause of death in women between 15 and 19 years. So mental health issues not only affect the pregnant or children, it affects across all age groups in women. So however, it has not received adequate attention, which is a worry sign. So I just now present the data of a general hospital from Karnataka, where over 2 years they have seen referrals to psychiatry from various departments. You can see only a very minor proportion of 3.3%, that is 17 referrals in the 2 years. So it is not that obstetricians are not caring or they are not providing. It also means that there is lack of awareness among the professionals regarding postpartum psychiatric illness and also antenatal psychiatric illness. And we also felt it is our job to increase awareness among our colleagues. So objective of my presentation is to know about what constitutes postpartum psychosis, what exactly it means, how prevalent is it, what are the common clinical features, who are at high risk, whom should we think they can develop, and what are the red flag signs of organic cause, and how do we manage, or principles of management. So what is there in the name? There are different terminologies. There's something called puerperal psychosis, postpartum psychosis. Even there are historical terms like mania lacteal, amentia, puerperal mania, the dreamlike state, delirium. And newly I heard a term called Donkin psychosis, which is coined by Ian Brockington, which means to say that eclampsia associated with psychosis. So it is not actually a simple condition. These are a clinical term used to describe a group of illness which occur in close relation to childbirth. So it can be either mania, it can be acute psychosis, or it can be pre-existing bipolar or a schizophrenia which get exacerbated during the postpartum. Or it can also resemble just like a delirium, like kind of confusion state. Or it can be a psychotic depression, which is a more severest form of depression. That is depression with psychotic symptoms. And so to look into brief history, postpartum psychosis is not very new. It was there for many centuries. In 4000 BC, Hippocrates has described a lady with psychotic features in postpartum. He called it as lactational psychosis. Later, there are descriptions by Marguerite Kempe, who herself has suffered from this condition, and later written a biography on it. So one of the key contribution came from Louis Victor Marseille in 19th century, where he written a treatise on madness of women who are pregnant, recently delivered, and nursing. He's a French psychiatrist. When working in a hospital, he was looking after these pregnant women who were delivered recently, and he made keen observations. One of the important note he written is that where subjects are predisposed to mental illness through either hereditary antecedents or previous illness or through an excessive nervous susceptibility, pregnancy, delivery, and lactation can have disastrous repercussions. This was ignored for nearly half a century, Again, in later 20th century, it was again translated and a lot of contributions were done. Research started showing interest. And many people took this field as the primary interest. So there is also a debate whether postpartum psychosis is a distinct entity or it is just a psychosis which occurs in postpartum. So because of high irritable nature, kind of like some unique features, so there is a debate. But still, neurologically, it doesn't have separate status. If you see the ICD, which is a British version of mental health classification, it is kept under mental disorders associated with physiological disturbances. They mean to say pregnancy is a kind of physiological disturbance, and during that time it can happen. So they call it as postnatal depression, which is milder form, puerperal psychosis, which is more severe form, and others. So they also put a duration criteria, like it should occur within 6 weeks of delivery. So if you put other classification like DSM, which is the American version of classification, in DSM-3, they kept under atypical psychosis. In DSM-5, they use a specifier for postpartum as a specifier for any mental illness. It could be psychosis or it could be depression. And they've taken duration criteria less than 4 weeks. The upcoming ICD-11, which is more latest, also included as a specific specifier than including a specific diagnosis itself. So there's a simple more classification which is more easier to use or communication among the perinatal specialist by Brockington et al. He called it as psychosis, mother-infant relation disorders or bonding disorders, depression, and a miscellaneous group of anxiety like pregnancy-specific anxiety and stress-related disorders. So how prevalent is it, and what is the risk in every woman? So at any period you compare a woman's life, during postpartum there are 22 times at higher risk of psychosis than at any time in their lifetime. So this is very high risk considering the fact that what is the baseline risk of any psychosis. So it can be either de novo. She can have never been a history of any psychosis. So it can come as a de novo, or it could be recurrence of a previous illness. Maybe she had illness during previous pregnancy, or she had illness before when she was not married. So that can be there. So the prevalence usually is 1 to 2 per 1,000 deliveries or 1 per 500 deliveries. Looks like a smaller number. Imagine this. So in India, there are 25 million childbirths per year. To translate this, it equals to 50,000 cases per year. With number of psychiatrists, 3 per 10 lakh population, this is a huge number to manage. And if you see the complexity of these cases, this is a huge number. So how they present, the presentation will be. So you imagine a woman who delivered, who was in a ward, in a postpartum ward, after 48 hours, after 72 hours, you see. You can see her compared to other women, she is not recovering as a natural course. You can see a woman who is looking ill, who is a little bit angry, who is uncooperative, having mood fluctuations, appearing confused and irritable and restless, and she's not sleeping at night. So this is the things you heard or you written in your own notes. So this says there could be something going on. So these are the kind of prodromal or initial symptoms you see first 2 to 3 days, followed by this is kindly called kaleidoscopic presentation, which is more fluctuating. There are times you come in the evening, she will be normal. You come in the morning, she will be abnormal. So this should not justify that she is normal. So you should have high suspicion on that whether this is going to psychosis. So later, within 3-4 days, there will be more clear-cut psychotic symptoms like delusions. It can be paranoid, it can be baby focus or birth-related. There can be hallucinations, or there can be mania symptoms or depressive symptoms. Or you also see she's excessively clinging. She's not giving the baby. She's always trying to hold the baby. And you can also see either decrease in the care of baby. She's not responding to the cues of the baby. For example, the baby is crying. She's not trying to feed the baby. She's not trying to pacify the baby. So you know something is going wrong. So this kind of picture, you think it could be psychosis. So coming to phenomenology and kind of presentation, Dr. Bernick et al. Had done a prospective study for 4 years of 59 patients. She felt a lot of patients are mood incongruent. It means that the symptoms are not incongruous with her mood. It could be persecutory, it could be more like a conspiracy kind of thing, or it could be baby-related delusions. When you look at first-rank symptoms, Schneiderian symptoms are only 7.8. So that is one thing, one more interesting finding. Phenomenologically, a lot of patients present mania with psychotic features. This is one of the commonest presentation, followed by psychotic depression, followed by mixed symptoms. So only present psychotic symptoms little uncommon. So they have mood symptoms along with psychotic symptoms. This is the commonest presentation they have. So in NIMHANS, there was a study by Dr. Chandra et al. She is the head of the unit. So she had done a retrospective study of 108 patients. Among them, 56 patients have only baby-related delusions. The commonest delusions are somebody will take the baby away, someone will kill the baby. Baby could be a devil, or baby is ill-fated, or baby is going to suffer. So she wants to save the baby from suffering. So this is thoughts she will have, or something like bizarre delusions, like this baby is an alien, that kind of thing. They are someone else's baby. This is not our baby. This is looking little abnormal. So this could not be born to me. So these kind of delusions and mothers can have. And they act on these delusions. It will be so approximately 53% will have these kind of delusions. 9 to 10% will have serious delusions related to baby. So when these presentations are there, you also think whether people can have any something problem in the brain, or it can be organic cause. For example, patient coming with eclampsia with seizures. So that is a serious thing, like associated seizures, catatonic signs, frank confusion. They are not at all oriented to at any time, or having multimodal hallucinations, incontinence, or neurological disease like blurring of vision, blindness. All those things will suggest that something could be more than just a functional psychosis. In these cases, we usually recommend MRI, EEG, and autoimmune workup. So this should be kept in mind when evaluating these cases. And neurobiologically, it is interesting to see so many theories have come up. One of the first theory which came is the endocrine theory, how estrogen is related to psychotic symptoms. This came from observations that women after that 45 years have slightly higher risk of developing schizophrenia compared to age-matched gender. From this, the hypothesis was generated. Estrogen, the abrupt fall in estrogen during postpartum period will increase the dopamine receptor sensitivity, and this could have led to psychotic symptoms is one of the hypotheses which is proposed. However, when these women are given prophylactic estrogen supplements, they are not helped in preventing the psychotic episodes, or they are not helped in treating the psychotic episode. So this has its own limitations. Another theory is elevated oxytocinergic activity. Oxytocin historically as recognized as a relaxing hormone or a love hormone. So its role has been studied in mania bipolar independent of purpurium. So it also been studied in purpurium whether it related to main psychotic symptoms. The another interesting come up is immune hypothesis. So there are a series of studies on these where they found that 4% of postpartum women with psychosis have antibodies. There are also higher CRP levels, interleukin 2, interleukin 6, which are inflammatory markers. So there are also clustering of cases in postpartum women with autoimmune thyroiditis and preeclampsia. All these point that there could be the immunity role in causing this kind of psychosis. So there is circadian rhythm disruption also played role. Sleep deprivation was the important factor. There was a study where they found that women who delivered at night times have higher risk of developing psychosis compared to who women delivered in the daytime. So deprivation of sleep and causing disruption in circadian rhythm is one of the risks involved in postpartum mania. So we finished the neurobiology topic. So who are at risk? So you see a lot of women coming to the OBG clinics day in and day out for antenatal checkups, or just before delivery they will come. So who should have a high means kind of like radar? Okay, these kind of people should be possibly develop psychosis or will not psychosis. So one of the obstacle factors is primary parity, consistently proved, high maternal age, consistently proved, preterm delivery is one thing, cesarean delivery is one thing, and prolonged labor. So these are the things which are found to be risk factors for postpartum psychosis. In terms of previous psychiatric illness, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, postpartum psychosis, and if she had a previous psychiatric illness, drug default. Along with that, family history of postpartum psychosis, one of the independent risk factors for psychosis. Decreased sleep is also considered. There are some studies which say the gender of baby will also influence along with post-social support. These are very old studies which are not replicated later. So we don't give much importance to the gender of the baby and social support as stressors for postpartum psychosis, but they are very important for postpartum depression, as Chaitra was mentioning. So how do you estimate the risk? So a primary woman has come for antenatal checkup. She has no psychiatric illness, no family history of psychosis. There is 1 in 1,000. If there is mother or sister had postpartum psychosis, it becomes 3 in 100. If patient had bipolar or schizoaffective disorder and first pregnancy, it becomes 1 in 5. If patient has previous psychiatric illness from bipolar or schizophrenia, along with that mother or sister has postpartum psychosis, become 1 in 2. And irrespective of it, if patient had in the previous pregnancy postpartum psychosis, she will definitely have 50% chance of having psychosis in this again in the next delivery also. So this should be kept in mind how the risk tremendously increases if she has family history or if she has previous psychosis in the previous delivery. Yeah. So what happens to these patients over the long term? You are followed up these cases. Patients keep coming to you maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line. So we have studies up to 5 years. Even we have studies up to 26 years also. Some studies. So majority of patients will convert to either bipolar or schizoaffective disorder. Only a minor proportion of people will the psychosis remain only to those duration like postpartum psychosis. It comes, it remains, again it non relapses again. So higher proportion of people likely to have bipolar disorder in the long term. So for obstetricians and medical professionals like interns, when should a referral should be made? Who are going to be doctors again in the future. So you suspect any symptom of postpartum psychosis. It could be irritability, it could be slight confusion, neglect of baby. It warrant immediate referral. Other than this, you suspect or you know the history of postpartum psychosis in the previous pregnancy that warrant a referral. Or the diagnosed case of bipolar schizophrenia. She already, you know that she is a diagnosed case of bipolar schizophrenia and she has come for antenatal checkup, you should suspect that. Or you found out during examination that she is taking antipsychotic medication, then also it warrant a referral. Or there is neglect of baby or any other risky behaviors, it also warrant a psychiatrist referral. So what is the risk involved? If you don't treat the psychosis, what will happen? So there are a lot of negative consequences. Chetra was actually alluding to a lot of things. It could lead to poor maternal bonding, impact on the baby development, behavioral problems. They may develop oppositional behavior disorder. They may develop conduct disorder. They may have poor performance in school. They also can have low IQ scores comparable to age match or generation match match of kids. They can have low IQ scores. So they are not, we don't equivalent every human psychosis to aggression and kind of like risk, but always there is risk of danger is there. The danger, what is the danger is the risk of suicide or infanticide. So there is a study which found that 25% of infanticides are due to postpartum psychosis. So considering this high risk, we don't want to take a chance in these cases. So how do we manage these cases? Principles of management we discuss. So any woman who consider referred to us, we like to admit this patient, or if she's already admitted under OBG, we try to get history for the last 24 hours, 48 hours, how she behaved, how she taking care of the baby, how she taking care of herself. This will make us, this will provide us how we can provide our care in the future. For example, if there is a risk involved, excess risk involved, she requires kind of high intensive care where there is supervision all the time. So this 48 hours history will define us to keep the baby with her or to not to separate the baby. So no mother, no family likes the baby mother to get separated. This is an emotionally weighed decision which had to be taken after proper risk assessment. So at all stages, we provide information to family. At all stages involve husband and the other family members in the discussion and involve them. So this makes your decision making also to communicate things very easily to them. And later comes pharmacotherapy and electroconvulsive therapy. So next big question is, okay, these patients require medication, there's no doubt about it. So do antipsychotics pass through breast milk? The answer is yes. To what extent? It depends. It depends on molecules of the drug, liquid solubility, affinity for plasma and milk proteins, and peak concentration and plasma half-life. So we usually take RID, related to infant dose. If it is 10% or less, it is acceptable. We like to choose these kind of medication for postpartum psychosis. So what is the evidence for safety? If somebody asks, so I can take this medication, but I have to breastfeed for next 6 months also. How safe is these are for my baby? Then you tell the evidence is mostly from case series and case reports. We don't have RCTs. Ethically, we can't do RCTs in these kind of population. So we have more of retrospective reviews and we have case series and case reports. From this, I can only promise there is no concern long-term safety. We only can promise short-term safety. So weigh the risk and benefits in each case. Choose a medication which has good response area. If she's already bipolar schizophrenia, which has responded to one particular drug, you choose that drug because it has already response area. Preferably avoid medication with longer half-lives. Avoid polypharmacy. This is one thing which consistently avoid polypharmacy to prevent any effects on the baby. So which medication are better? In order of choice, antipsychotic, olanzapine, quetiapine, risperidone, haloperidol. In this order, if you choose, it will be better. If people also ask whether these are good medication or not, you can also tell from this that, okay, these are preferable medication. You avoid clozapine, little about, we don't have data about aripiprazole, amisulpride, or letrozole. But talking about aripiprazole, it looks safer medication, but during postpartum and breastfeeding mothers, it can suppress lactation. So we generally avoid aripiprazole in the lactating mothers. Mood stabilizers, preferably valproate. Valproate, which is very contraindicated during pregnancy, suddenly becomes much safer in postpartum because of the larger molecular size. But we try to avoid mood stabilizers unless it is very much required. So we don't give any mood stabilizers unless it is very much required, or the antipsychotics are not working or not giving adequate response. So benzodiazepines we usually give for shorter duration, 1 or 2 weeks. Probably lorazepam is better because of shorter half-life. So ECT, usually people have a lot of stigma and myths about ECT. One of safer option for patients in postpartum. It is indicated when the risk to self others is higher, faster response you want. You also want the patient is reluctant to take medication. There is severe aggression, severe irritability, unable to manage. There is inadequate response to medication, other indication. So it is a safer treatment, especially if the litigious case is there who does not want to take any psychotropics because of concerns the baby will have, then ECT is a much safer option. So puerperal psychosis is also known to be very responsive to ECT. This was studied in 1999. Compared to non-puerperal psychosis, this is very much responsive. So they are all the more reason to give. And postpartum itself does not confer any excess risk during the postpartum compared to the general population. So coming to the end, so there are a few resources I want to recommend. One is International Marseille Society for Perinatal Mental Health. This is a international society, people can become membership. They conduct biennially, once in 2 years, the international conference, people can join that. There are resource material for patients, for the clinicians also to see. There are many videos about the postpartum mental illness. About the generals, there are archives of mental health, the BMC psychiatry, and bipolar disorder is one more thing. So about the apps, we use specific apps to see or also recommend clinicians to use these apps. Only LACMED, it's a data, which is a database for all the medications and the plasma levels in the baby and about the relative infant dose. It gives a summary information. It gets updated consistently. So you can use this and you can see yourself the any medication which you want to check can be indicated or not in breastfeeding mothers. Another is BUMP, best use of medicines in pregnancy. Another app which gives information about pregnancy also. So these are two apps or online websites which you can recommend or you can yourself refer. Okay. So take a message from my talk is that mental health issues are common in peripartum. These can vary from transient mood changes to severe psychiatric illness. Early recognition and treatment is vital for the health of mother and baby. Need for strong liaison between obstetricians and psychiatrists. With this, I end my talk. Thank you for patient listening. Any queries you can ask or also you can write to us through this mail. Thank you.